69,000 people detained. 43%. No criminal charge. No conviction. Nothing. $170 billion deployed through 2029. The largest immigration enforcement budget in American history. And in January 2026 alone, one single month, federal agents shot 5 people. 6 more died in detention. One of the dead, a registered nurse, U.S. citizen, legal gun owner, shot while filming agents with his cell phone. His name was Alex Pretti. He was 37. Pause. This isn't immigration policy anymore. This is a system under stress, and the cracks are showing in real time. But here's what almost nobody is calculating. The exposed parties aren't just immigrants. They're bystanders, citizens, people with jobs and mortgages and kids in school. People who assumed this story had nothing to do with them. They were wrong. This isn't about morality or betrayal. It's about simple arithmetic. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why the math says this gets worse, much worse, before it gets better. I'm going to break this down using 3 numbers. Just 3. Each one reveals a different pressure point. Together, they create what I call a Lollapalooza. Multiple forces compounding in the same direction until the outcome becomes inevitable. No politics, no ideology, just incentives, behavior, and arithmetic. Even if you're not an immigrant, this affects you. Directly, let me show you why. Number 1. $170 billion through 2029. Let's start with the money. $170 billion budgeted for immigration agencies over roughly 3.5 years. That's not a policy statement. That's a resource allocation, and resource allocations create incentives. Here's the trick most people miss. When you fund an agency at historic levels, that agency must justify the funding. How? Activity, volume, arrests, detentions, visible operations. Think about it like a household budget. If you hire a contractor and pay them up front for 3 years of work, you expect results. Output. Something to show for the money. And in enforcement, output means one thing: enforcement actions. Minneapolis alone saw 3,000 agents deployed this month. 3,000 in one city. Thousands of protesters marched in sub-zero temperatures. Minnesota officials called it an occupation. Now, I don't care what you call it politically. What I care about is this. When you surge armed personnel into dense urban environments with volume-based incentive structures, errors are not a bug. They are a feature of the math. Keep that detail in mind. It matters later. Number 2. 69,000 detained. 43% with no criminal record. 69,000 people held in immigration detention as of early January. That's a record. But here's the part that changes everything. 43% of those detained had no criminal charge or conviction. None. 0. The administration argues the operations target criminals, and some arrests have involved people with criminal histories, but nearly half the current detainees are being held for civil immigration violations. The legal equivalent? A traffic ticket. This is where incentives start compounding. If agents are measured by volume, by arrests and detentions, then the path of least resistance is picking up people who are easy to find and unlikely to resist. That means people with jobs, families, fixed addresses, people who show up to court dates. It does not mean hardened criminals evading capture. This is basic behavioral economics. You get what you incentivize, and right now, the structure incentivizes quantity, not precision. Now the shocking part. Some of these people never even committed a crime. Not here. Not anywhere. And they're sitting in detention centers, funded by your tax dollars. When systems optimize for volume, error rates rise. And when enforcement involves firearms, errors become lethal. Number 3. 6 detention deaths, plus 5 shootings in 1 month. Here's where the compounding becomes undeniable. At least 6 people have died in ICE detention centers since the start of 2026. That follows at least 30 deaths in ICE custody last year, a 2-decade high. But the velocity this month is different. Let me walk you through the cases. Only verified facts. No assumptions. Case 1. Geraldo Lunas Campos, Cuban immigrant, died January 3rd at a Trump-era detention camp on a U.S. military base in Texas. ICE initially said he experienced medical distress. Then, after the Washington Post reported the death would likely be classified a homicide, DHS issued a new statement. Now they said Lunas tried to commit suicide and then resisted security officers. This week, the El Paso County medical examiner released the finding: homicide. Cause of death, asphyxia due to neck and torso compression. That's not a medical emergency. That's a man who stopped breathing because of physical restraint. Case 2 and 3, January 14th. 2 more detainees died the same day. A Nicaraguan man found unresponsive at the military base site called East Camp, Montana. Presumed suicide, according to ICE. A Mexican man found unresponsive in a Georgia detention center. Both deaths under investigation. 3 more deaths: Houston, Philadelphia, Indio, California. And that's when everything changes. Because detention deaths are lagging indicators. They show system stress after it accumulates. The shootings, they show it in real time. Pause. This is where most people misunderstand the story. 5 shootings this month. Let me break down the pattern. Alex Pretti, Minneapolis nurse. Shot Saturday. DHS says he resisted agents' attempts to disarm him. Bystander video, verified by Reuters, shows agents pepper spraying him as he filmed on his cell phone. No weapon visible. Multiple agents wrestle him down. Then shots. He was a U.S. citizen, a lawful gun owner, a registered nurse. Renee Good, shot earlier this month in Minnesota by ICE officer Jonathan Ross. Within hours, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem called Good a domestic terrorist who tried to ram the officer with her car. DHS has not presented evidence of any link to terrorism. Video shows Ross fired as Good's car moved past him. Portland, Oregon, the day after Good's death. A Border Patrol agent shot and wounded a Venezuelan man and woman during what DHS called a targeted vehicle stop. DHS said the driver attempted to run over agents. The man, Luis Nino Moncada, was later charged with assaulting an officer. His passenger, Yorlenis Zambrano Contreras, pleaded guilty to entering the U.S. illegally in 2023. Julio Cesar Sosa Celis, shot in the leg in Minneapolis on January 15th. DHS said he fled authorities, said he and 2 other men hit an officer with a snow shovel and broom handle. But here's the twist. Court documents unsealed this week tell a completely different story. An FBI affidavit states that ICE officers scanned a license plate registered to a different person. Someone else suspected of an immigration violation. They chased the wrong man. Then came the alleged assault. Then the shooting. That's not a rogue officer. That's a system error with a firearm attached. Now let's connect the 3 numbers. $170 billion creates pressure to deploy personnel and generate activity. 69,000 detainees, 43% without criminal records. Shows volume optimization is already happening. 6 detention deaths and 5 shootings in 1 month reveal the error rate that volume optimization produces. This is the Lollapalooza effect. 3 forces: funding pressure, volume incentives, and armed enforcement in dense urban environments, all pushing the same direction at the same time. Now invert it. Ask, what would need to happen for this not to escalate? Funding would need to decrease, incentive structures would need to shift from volume to precision. Oversight mechanisms would need to slow the operational tempo. None of those are present. In fact, all 3 are moving in the opposite direction. This isn't about good intentions or bad actors. When incentives point one way, behavior follows. That's not cynicism. That's physics. So what does this mean for 2026 and 2027? Most likely outcome: enforcement intensity continues. Detention populations rise toward capacity limits. Death and injury rates increase proportionally. Legal exposure expands, not just for agencies, but for municipalities, contractors, and anyone adjacent to operations. Volatility is now structural. It's baked into the resource allocation. Here's what you do. 1. Assets. If you hold exposure to private detention operators, border technology contractors, or municipal bonds in jurisdictions funding enforcement infrastructure, understand the liability tail. These entities now carry headline risk and litigation risk simultaneously. 2. Decisions. If you or anyone in your household could be affected by enforcement operations, including as a bystander, know the legal exposure. Filming with a cell phone, being present at a protest, even driving near an enforcement action now carries non-zero physical risk in certain jurisdictions. 3. Exposure. Track the detention death data quarterly. It's a leading indicator of system stress. When deaths accelerate, litigation follows. When litigation follows, costs reallocate through taxes, insurance premiums, and municipal budgets. The math doesn't care about your politics. It doesn't care about intentions. It only cares about incentives. And incentives say this escalates. I don't tell you what to believe. I tell you what the numbers say, and the numbers say this gets worse before it gets better. The numbers don't lie.